There is a place in America where horse-drawn buggies still travel along country roads, where children grow up surrounded by farms and close-knit families, and where modern technology is carefully controlled. From the outside, the Amish way of life can look almost perfect. Quiet communities, simple homes, strong families, hard work, traditional values, a life seemingly protected from the stress and chaos of the modern world. But every society has another side, and behind the peaceful image of Amish life are difficult questions that outsiders rarely see. What happens when someone disagrees with the rules? What happens when a young person wants a different life? What happens when religious tradition conflicts with personal freedom? And what happens when someone decides that the Amish life is no longer the life they want? These questions don't have simple answers. And before we explore them, there is one important fact to understand. There is no single Amish community. The Amish are not one perfectly uniform group following exactly the same rules. There are hundreds of Amish settlements, and practices can vary considerably from one community to another. Some communities are more conservative. Others are more willing to use modern technology. Some allow certain types of machinery. Others restrict them. Some have different expectations about clothing, transportation, education, and interaction with outsiders. So when we talk about the darker or more controversial sides of Amish life, we are not saying that every Amish person experiences these things in the same way. Instead, we're looking at the tensions that can appear when a tightly organized religious community meets individual freedom, modern society, and the changing world. And perhaps the biggest question of all is this: how much freedom are you willing to give up in exchange for belonging? To understand that question, we have to start with the foundation of Amish society: community. For many Amish people, community is not simply a neighborhood, it is a way of life. Your family is part of the community. Your church is part of the community. Your neighbors are part of the community. Your work is connected to the community. Even many everyday decisions are influenced by community expectations. This creates an extraordinary level of social connection. If a family needs help, neighbors can often provide it. If a barn needs to be built, people can work together. If someone needs assistance, the community can sometimes step in. Children grow up knowing the people around them. Older generations pass knowledge to younger generations. People share traditions, responsibilities, and religious beliefs. In a world where many people feel increasingly isolated, this kind of community can be incredibly powerful. But there is another side to strong communities. The stronger the expectations of the group, the greater the pressure can become on the individual. Imagine growing up in a place where almost everyone knows your family. Your decisions are noticed. Your behavior can affect your reputation. Your choices may be interpreted not only as personal decisions, but as reflections of your family and community. For someone who agrees with the rules, this can provide stability. But for someone who begins to question them, the experience can be very different. And this is where the story becomes complicated, because the Amish don't simply have traditions. They have a system of expectations that can influence almost every part of daily life. One important concept is known as the Ordnung. The Ordnung is essentially a set of community expectations and rules. It can cover things such as clothing, technology, transportation, appearance, social behavior, and other aspects of daily life. But there is not one universal Ordnung for every Amish person. different communities can have different versions. This is important because popular culture often presents the Amish as though they all follow one giant rule book. Reality is much more complicated. Still, the principle remains. There are things the community considers acceptable, and there are things it considers unacceptable. For most people, rules are easy to understand when they involve obvious crimes or safety issues. But what happens when religious rules govern ordinary personal choices? What you wear, how you travel, what technology you use, how you communicate, how you educate your children, who you socialize with, what kind of lifestyle you pursue. This can create a very different relationship with personal freedom. Modern society often teaches people that individuality is a virtue. Be yourself. Choose your career. Choose where you live. Choose your beliefs. Choose your relationships. Choose your lifestyle. The traditional Amish approach places much greater emphasis on community. The individual is important, but the individual is also part of something larger, and that creates a difficult balance, because sometimes what a person wants is not what the community expects. Imagine being a young Amish person. You have grown up in a rural community. Your family has lived according to the traditions of that community. You know your neighbors. You understand the customs. You know how people dress. You know how church works. You know what technologies are accepted and which ones are discouraged. You know what is expected of you. But then you begin to wonder about the outside world. You see cars. You see computers. You see universities. You see people traveling. You hear music. You discover different careers. You meet people from different cultures. And you begin to realize that there is an enormous world beyond the community you grew up in. What do you do with that knowledge? For many Amish young people, adolescence includes a period commonly associated with Rumspringa. The word is often translated as running around. But popular culture has exaggerated what Rumspringa means. It is not simply an official period where every Amish teenager is encouraged to party and break every rule. The reality varies between communities and individuals. For some young people, it may involve greater freedom to socialize and interact with the outside world. For others, the experience may be much more limited. Eventually, Amish young people who choose to become baptized members of the church make a serious commitment to the community and its religious way of life. And that decision can have lifelong consequences. This is one of the most important moments in Amish life, because before baptism, there is generally more room for exploration. After baptism, the expectations become much more serious. And if a person later decides that they no longer want to follow the community's religious rules, leaving can become emotionally complicated. To an outsider, leaving might sound easy. Just move away, get a job, buy a car, find an apartment, start over. But imagine doing that when your entire childhood has been built around a particular community. Imagine leaving behind your parents, your siblings, your grandparents, your friends, your language, your traditions, your familiar food, your religious identity, your entire social network. Suddenly, the outside world can feel enormous, and freedom can be frightening when you have never had to navigate it alone. A former Amish person may have to learn things that many people take for granted. How to manage money, how to deal with banks, how to obtain transportation, how to navigate technology, how to apply for jobs, how to understand taxes and insurance, how to build relationships in a completely different social environment. And there is another challenge that can be even more painful: identity. If you were raised Amish and later leave, who are you? Are you still Amish culturally? Are you now completely part of mainstream society? Do you keep your religious beliefs? Do you abandon them? Do you try to create something between the two worlds? There is no universal answer. Some former members adapt successfully. Some struggle for years. Some maintain relationships with family members. Others experience painful separation. And this brings us to one of the most controversial aspects of Amish life: shunning. The Amish practice of church discipline can include social separation for members who violate serious rules and refuse to repent. The exact form and severity can differ between communities. Popular culture sometimes portrays shunning as though a person is instantly erased from their entire family. Reality can be more complicated, but the basic idea is powerful. A religious community can use social consequences to encourage members to remain within the accepted rules. From the perspective of the community, discipline can be seen as protecting religious order. From the perspective of someone who disagrees with the rules, the same system can feel like enormous pressure. And that tension is at the heart of the debate. How much influence should a religious community have over an individual's behavior? When does community discipline become coercion? And when does protecting tradition become limiting personal freedom? These are difficult questions, and they aren't unique to the Amish. Similar questions exist in many religious and cultural communities around the world, but the Amish provide a particularly interesting example because their communities are so tightly connected. When almost everyone around you shares the same expectations, choosing to go against those expectations can be extremely difficult. Now consider education. Many Amish children traditionally attend small schools and complete formal education around the 8th grade. Afterward, young people often continue learning through work, apprenticeships, family responsibilities, and practical experience. There are obvious strengths to this system. Children can develop practical skills. They can learn responsibility. They can become involved in family businesses. They can learn farming, construction, cooking, sewing, woodworking, animal care, and other skills. But critics ask a difficult question. What if a child wants a completely different future? What if someone wants to become a doctor, an engineer, a scientist, a university professor, a lawyer, or another professional requiring years of higher education? For someone who wants that kind of life, traditional Amish education can create serious limitations. This doesn't mean Amish children lack intelligence. It means the educational system has a different goal. Mainstream education often emphasizes preparing children for a wide range of possible careers. Traditional Amish education places greater emphasis on preparing children for life within the community. That difference is fundamental. One system asks, "What can you become?" The other often asks, "What kind of person will you become within your community?" And neither question is insignificant. But when a child wants an answer different from the community's expectations, conflict can emerge. Another controversial issue is gender roles. Traditional Amish communities often maintain distinct expectations for men and women. Men may traditionally take greater responsibility for farming, construction, business, and outdoor work. Women may traditionally focus more on household responsibilities, children, cooking, sewing, gardening, and family life. For people who embrace these roles, they can provide structure and a clear sense of responsibility. But for someone who wants something different, they can feel restrictive. A young woman may dream of a career that isn't traditionally expected of her. A young man may want a role that doesn't fit traditional expectations. The question becomes, does the community adapt to the individual, or does the individual adapt to the community? This is one of the biggest philosophical differences between traditional Amish culture and modern Western culture. Modern society increasingly emphasizes individual choice. Traditional Amish society places greater emphasis on established roles and community expectations. Again, there is no simple answer. Every family is different. Every person is different. Every community is different. But the tension is real. Another area where Amish life is sometimes misunderstood is technology. People often say that the Amish reject technology. That's not entirely accurate. The Amish do not simply have one universal rule that says modern technology is forbidden. Instead, different communities evaluate technologies differently. Some technologies may be prohibited. Others may be permitted under certain circumstances. Some Amish businesses use modern machinery. Some people may use telephones or other technologies outside the home. Some communities allow technologies that others reject. The important question is often not simply whether something is modern. It's what effect the technology has on the community. Could it increase individualism? Could it weaken family relationships? Could it create dependence on the outside world? Could it encourage materialism? Could it change the community's traditional way of life? From this perspective, the Amish approach to technology is less about rejecting invention and more about controlling its social consequences. But there is a darker side to technological restrictions. Imagine living in a world where most people communicate instantly. You can send a message in seconds. You can video call someone across the planet. You can access almost any information imaginable. Now imagine having restrictions on those technologies. That can create inconvenience. It can make certain jobs more difficult. It can make communication slower. And for someone who wants to participate in the wider economy, these limitations can become challenging. Yet the Amish accept these disadvantages because they believe certain benefits are more important. And this brings us to health care. Another common misconception is that Amish people completely reject modern medicine. They do not. Amish individuals may use doctors, dentists, hospitals, medications, surgery, and other forms of modern medical treatment. But health care decisions can vary between families and communities. Some people may prefer home remedies for minor problems. Others may seek professional medical care immediately, and serious illness can create major financial challenges. Many Amish families do not rely on conventional health insurance in the same way as the broader American population. Instead, some communities and families may use community support, direct payment, negotiated medical costs, or other arrangements. But serious medical treatment can still be expensive. And when a child becomes seriously ill, religious beliefs, parental authority, medical advice, and legal responsibilities can sometimes collide. These situations have occasionally produced public disputes. The deeper question is universal. How much authority should parents have over medical decisions for their children? How much freedom should religious communities have? And when should the state intervene? There are no easy answers. But healthcare becomes particularly complicated when cultural traditions and modern medical systems operate according to very different assumptions. Now we come to one of the most sensitive subjects: privacy. The Amish generally value privacy. They often prefer not to have their religious practices turned into public entertainment. They may avoid publicity. They may be uncomfortable with cameras. They may prefer resolving personal disputes within the community. That privacy can protect families from unwanted attention. But privacy can also create difficult questions when serious wrongdoing is alleged. Whenever a close-knit organization handles problems internally, there is a risk that vulnerable people may feel unable to speak. This issue is not unique to Amish communities. It can happen anywhere, in families, schools, religious organizations, businesses, sports organizations, military institutions. The lesson is universal. A strong community must also have ways to protect people who are vulnerable, because loyalty can be powerful, but loyalty should never mean ignoring harm. There have been cases involving allegations of abuse and misconduct within Amish communities, as there have been in many other religious and non-religious communities. Those cases should be investigated individually. They should not be used to claim that Amish people as a whole are abusive or dangerous. That would be unfair and inaccurate. But they do raise an important question about accountability. What happens when the desire to protect the community's reputation conflicts with the need to protect an individual? That is a difficult question for any society. Another challenge comes from economic change. The romantic image of the Amish farmer working peacefully on a small farm doesn't tell the whole story. Land is expensive. Farms are becoming harder to acquire in some areas. Markets change. Competition increases. Young people may have fewer opportunities to become independent farmers. As a result, many Amish people participate in businesses outside traditional farming: construction, furniture, cabinet making, manufacturing, retail, agricultural businesses, tourism-related enterprises, and other forms of work. This creates an interesting contradiction. The Amish may try to maintain separation from mainstream culture while depending on mainstream markets. They may limit certain technologies while producing goods for customers who use the newest technologies. They may avoid some aspects of modern life while participating in the modern economy. This isn't necessarily hypocrisy. It is adaptation. Every traditional society has to decide how much it can interact with the modern world without losing its identity. And the Amish are constantly negotiating that boundary. There is another pressure that is rarely visible from the outside: population growth. Amish communities tend to have large families, and Amish populations have grown significantly over time. As communities grow, they need more land, more homes, more farms, more schools, more businesses. But land isn't unlimited. And when a community becomes crowded, young families may need to move. New settlements can be created. This means that even a culture known for stability is constantly changing. Some Amish communities expand, some split, some become more conservative, others become more open to new technologies. The Amish are not frozen in time. They are constantly negotiating with the modern world. And perhaps that is the greatest misunderstanding of all. People often imagine the Amish as people living exactly as their ancestors did hundreds of years ago, but that's not what is happening. Their culture has changed. Their businesses have changed. Their relationships with technology have changed. Their interactions with the outside economy have changed. The Amish are not outside history. They are part of history, and they are making choices about the future just like everyone else. So what happens when someone decides they no longer want those choices? What happens when a young person leaves? What happens when someone rejects the rules? What happens when a person believes their individual freedom matters more than community expectations? There is no single answer. Some people leave and build successful lives. Some struggle. Some maintain relationships with relatives. Some experience significant family conflict. Some eventually return. Some never do. And perhaps this is where the romantic image of Amish life finally breaks apart. Because a perfect community does not exist. The Amish have strengths, extraordinary strengths, community support, practical skills, family connections, strong traditions, a deep sense of responsibility, a slower relationship with technology. But they also face difficult questions: conformity, individual freedom, gender expectations, educational limitations, healthcare challenges, economic pressure, social discipline, and the painful process of leaving. The Amish story isn't simply a story about people who reject modern technology. It is a story about people trying to preserve a particular way of life in a world that is changing faster every year. And that struggle is something almost everyone can understand, because every generation faces the same question. How much of the past should we preserve? How much should we change? And who gets to decide? The Amish answer has traditionally been the community decides together through religious tradition and established practices. Modern society often answers the individual decides, and these two philosophies can produce completely different lives. Imagine living in a world where your community gives you a clear identity from childhood. You know what is expected. You know your responsibilities. You know the people around you. You know where you belong. That can be comforting. But imagine also wanting something different, a different career, a different relationship, a different religion, a different lifestyle, a different future. Then the same community that gave you identity can become the obstacle standing between you and your dreams. That is the paradox. Community can be both protection and pressure. Tradition can be both wisdom and restriction. Simplicity can be both freedom and limitation. And belonging can be both comforting and frightening. So, is Amish life dark? Not inherently. Is it perfect? Definitely not. The truth is more complicated. There are Amish families who are deeply happy with their way of life. There are people who appreciate the community structure, religious faith, family relationships, and slower pace. There are also former Amish people who believe the system was too restrictive for them. Both experiences can exist at the same time. And that's why we should be careful with sensational stories. The real Amish story is much more interesting than a simple tale of good versus bad. It's a story about human beings, people trying to balance faith and freedom, family and individuality, tradition and change, community and personal choice. The dark side isn't that the Amish have some hidden secret society. The dark side is something much more ordinary. Every community has boundaries. Every tradition has expectations. Every family has pressure. And whenever a person wants to walk a different path, there is a possibility of conflict. Perhaps that is the most important lesson we can take from the Amish. Not that we should abandon modern life, not that we should copy Amish traditions, and not that Amish society should be judged by the standards of a completely different culture. Instead, their way of life forces us to ask questions about our own. We live in a world with more freedom than almost any previous generation. We can choose our careers, choose where we live, choose what we watch, choose who we communicate with, choose what we believe, choose how we present ourselves. But despite all this freedom, Many people feel lonely. Many people feel disconnected. Many people don't know their neighbors. Many families struggle to spend time together. Technology has made communication easier, but connection isn't always the same thing as communication. The Amish have chosen a different path. They have accepted restrictions in exchange for community, and sometimes those restrictions can be painful. But sometimes that community can provide something modern life struggles to provide: a sense of belonging, a sense of responsibility, a sense that you're not completely alone. So perhaps the real question isn't whether the Amish lifestyle is better or worse. The real question is, what are we willing to sacrifice for the life we want? The Amish may sacrifice convenience for community. Modern society may sacrifice some community for freedom and convenience. Every system has a cost. Every choice creates consequences. And every person eventually has to decide what matters most. As the sun sets over the farmland, a horse-drawn buggy disappears down a quiet road. The world becomes silent again. No traffic, no notifications, no advertisements. Just the sound of wheels moving across the road. From a distance, the scene looks peaceful, and perhaps it is. But behind that peaceful image are thousands of individual stories. Stories of people who stayed, people who left, people who questioned, people who believed, people who struggled, people who found exactly the life they wanted, and people who discovered that the life they wanted was somewhere else. That is the part of Amish life outsiders may never fully understand. It isn't simply about horses. It isn't simply about farms. It isn't simply about avoiding technology. It is about belonging, and belonging has a price. Sometimes that price is convenience. Sometimes it is freedom. Sometimes it is change. And sometimes the price is the courage to decide for yourself where you truly belong. Because behind every tradition, there is a human being. Behind every rule, there is a choice. And behind every quiet road, there is a story that the outside world may never see. The Amish world may look simple from the outside, but simplicity is never as simple as it appears.